Hey everyone, my name's Aidan Ouckama. I just graduated with my CS degree, and here's how I survived the 2026 job market. In this video, I'm going to be breaking down the 4 years I was in college studying for my CS degree, as well as a little bit before and a little bit after. And along with that, I'll be going through the things that I learned, the struggles that I had, and the things that I would do different if I could go back. So if you're in the same position as me, a CS major in college, here's my pathway to how I broke big tech. So in high school, to be honest, I was a pretty big chud. I didn't do anything insane like ouckah, usamo. I also didn't contribute much to the programming world. Like I didn't do open source or anything like that. But my junior and senior year, which was 2021, 2022, we were still heavily impacted by COVID. This meant I couldn't go outside. I was in my room all the time. So I had a lot of time with myself and my computer. At the time, I was a really big fan of this YouTuber, Danny, and he had a series on his YouTube channel where he developed a week of game development in Unity. And it was this like stick fighting game where you're a knight and you would like interact with NPCs and fight enemies. I took a lot of inspiration from that. So in high school, I would say the main accomplishments that I had was this Unity game that I made. I called it Passive Income. It was a stupid AFK clicker game where you clicked on houses that made money and then you used that money to buy power-ups, which you could attach to those houses so they could make more money. It was like a really crappy Roblox game, but made in Unity. I actually released this on Steam, beta playtest, and I actually released it, but it's actually still on Steam. If you guys want to play it, just search up Passive Income and download the beta playtest. I think you guys can play it. It's really bad. I also made this other game called Gritter, which took a lot of inspiration from Danny's. I think he made a game in 30 minutes. It looks a lot like that, but obviously I didn't copy it. I just, referenced it. But this was another game that I made where you could click on blocks on the map. You're trying to guide this block to bounce off the blocks that you place to reach a specific end. I was actually really proud of that game. I made like 20 levels. I even made a little internal developer tool where it makes it a lot easier to create the levels instead of like manually creating assets in Unity. Actually, looking back, I'm pretty proud of that. But this was the first game that I actually showed other people that I knew. In high school, I worked as a waiter at this pizza place, and I brought my iPad and I had my coworkers, play the levels that I made. And some of them, they were pretty into it. And again, took a lot of inspiration from Danny. So I also made my own developer vlogs. If you guys want to scroll down in my videos, or I'll put the links in the description, you guys can check that out. Yeah, no, I was not like a coding genius or a competitive programmer when I was in high school. I just made a few games, made a few websites. I knew I wanted to code when I was older, but not anything crazier. And I wasn't like some prodigy or anything like that. So now entering freshman year, not too much to say either. I was really good at Rocket League. Joined the Stevens esports team, if that has anything to do with this video. I remember a Frisbee game that I was developing because I was also part of the Stevens Ultimate Frisbee team. Shout out MKBHD. But I didn't even completely finish this game. I had a few clips on my TikTok of it breaking. But that does remind me, I did start my ouckah TikTok. No videos about internships or anything like that. I just had a bunch of stupid computer science major POVs and skits that I did when I was a freshman. I vividly remember the first video I did that went viral. I went to an English class where the teacher knew that all the kids there were CS majors. They're just doing an elective. It wasn't like a core class for any of us, so we weren't really paying attention. We just did enough to get by. So on the first week, we got a homework assignment where the teacher was like, you need to go outside and explore nature, because there's a nature class. So explore nature, go by a river, breathe in the air, touch some grass. I went home, thought about that assignment, and I made a TikTok. I was like, when the English teacher makes the CS majors touch grass or something stupid like that. I'll put a screenshot. Yeah, that was the first TikTok I made, or CS TikTok that I made that went viral. I think it had 360K views as of right now. Not too shabby. Freshman year was the start of my CS TikTok career journey. Moving on to sophomore year, this is when I discovered what internships were. You could sort of see if you scroll back in my TikTok, my content's starting to pivot. I'm not sure how I ended up in the software engineering internship sort of realm. I ended up on a Discord called Computer Science Career Development, or CSCD. Link in the bio. This is one of the communities that I heavily utilized to get the internships that I got that you'll hear later. But I ended up in this Discord and everyone was talking about, oh, I got a Google internship, or oh, I got my Meta internship, or I just had round 2 for Jane Street. I didn't know what any of these words meant at the time. I've heard some of the companies before, I didn't know how prestigious, or they used a code word ORTS, O-R-Z, or it's like someone, I didn't know how ORTS these internships were. This is when I got introduced to the world of software engineering internships and the almost video game of applying. I remember the first thing I did when I joined CSCD was I put my resume in the channel, and I got two very different responses to that resume. One half of the people were people that have seen my TikToks, because at this point, my TikToks I had a good amount of followers on my TikTok. I think I was at like 10K, maybe 9, 8K.
15, some shit like 10 million or something like that. 5 million, something like that.
Wait. Half of them have seen my TikToks and are like, dude, you're the TikTok guy, because I put on my resume. And then half were completely shitting on my resume. Like, because all I had were these stupid game dev projects. My bullets were not optimized. I didn't have any metrics on my resume. I didn't use Jake's resume yet. I used some random Google Doc template that looked horrible. So the other half were shitting on it, but it was good that they shat on it because I iterated on it, I improved it, and they're the complete reason why I even landed internships. And also for those who were around during that time, I'll give you some lore to CSCD. There were two main cracked internship people in that community. I remember one of them was named Chimichanda, and they were, I'm pretty sure, the same year as me, but they already had 4 internships by the time they were a sophomore. So they interned at Tesla, the autopilot program, which is the most prestigious Tesla team in terms of software engineering. They're in Microsoft, Coinbase, I believe, and then obviously Google. They had a Google internship. And then the other titan, Reverie, they were also on the Tesla AP program, I'm pretty sure. They actually interned at Anthropic way before the whole hype. So they're probably a millionaire at this point, but they joined Anthropic in like 2023, 2024, like pretty early on. And these two were they would also talk the most shit in there. Like you could tell, like it was heavy when they walked, you know what I mean? But yeah, a little CSCD lore that I remember when I was a sophomore. So anyways, as I mentioned before, my content started pivoting towards the internship grind. And I made this really controversial release of content where I started this Google Sheets application sheet where I tracked all of my applications, the links, my current stage in the process, and I made this sheet public for anyone to look at. The controversy or the divide was one half was super happy, and this was the half of people that gave me the purpose to release this, because at the time, software engineering applications weren't as normalized as they are today. They aren't all chucked into a GitHub repo or all in a Google Sheet. You had to like manually search on Google Forms, scroll through it, and then maybe some links would be shared between friend groups, but definitely not like standardized. I think actually that's wrong. Pitt CSC had their GitHub repo, and I sort of took inspiration from them, but theirs was the only source of truth. There was no other resources for internships. So I started the ouckah Sheets, I called it. And the other half was very much against the Google Sheets, but not in like a negative way. It was in more of a like protect yourself sort of way. Like you're just creating more competition. And some people actually use that as an excuse as to why they aren't getting internships, because, oh, you have this centralized place for everybody to apply to. Now I won't get any jobs. And that was kind of stupid. That's a skill issue. So after a few months of having this sheet up, consistently applying, I'll pull up my stats right now. So in 2024, I applied to 155 applications, which is only the applications I put on this sheet. I think I had about 50 or so before I created this sheet. So it's more like 200 applications. And from those 200 applications, I only got 31 OAs, most of them probably being automatic. If you don't know what an OA is, it's an online assessment. It's like a leak code problem or two that you do on like HackerRank or something like that as like a way to filter out applicants. It looks like I got rejected from most of those OAs because I only got 7 phone interviews. And from those 7 phone interviews, I got 5 final or technical interviews. And then I actually got 5 offers from those 5 interviews. So I was pretty decent at interviewing at that time, apparently. Now, why do I think I went 5 for 5? I will tell you why I think I went 5 for 5. The first 2 interviews that I got, DoorDash and Datadog. And at the point where I got those interviews, I indulged myself in CSCD enough to understand what the rankings of companies are. DoorDash and Datadog were pretty high up there. And I'm not sure what made me so desperate for an internship. I'm not sure if it was the social pressure and the social validation, if I had a feeling that the market was gonna be bad, or if I just wanted to clout chase on TikTok. But I desperately wanted either one of those companies. I scheduled those interviews not as far out, but pretty far out, where it gave me about 2 months of leeway. And within those 2 months, I did the blind 75, I did the blind 150, not all of them because some of the hard ones were kind of insane. And I did about like 4 to 5 mock interviews with some of my friends. So I did all the like usual prep within those 2 months, but I also did this unique prep that I think killed 2 birds with 1 stone, where I was prepping with technical interviews and growing my TikTok channel. And that was live streaming leak code problems on TikTok. When I was preparing for my DoorDash and Datadog interviews, every single day I would pull up my phone, start a TikTok live, and I would do leak code problems for 2 hours. And honestly, I think this was the most helpful in preparing for a leak code interview, because the chat acted as like a pseudo interviewer where they're giving me little tips or there's a lot of critique. There's a lot of critique in the chat. And also as like someone that I could talk my thoughts to, because no one is gonna watch a silent leak code TikTok stream. So I was like, okay, to fill in this gap, I'm going to verbalize what I'm thinking while I'm solving these leak code problems. I don't know what spirit from above possessed me with this idea. That gave me the most applicable skills somehow, was streaming leak code problems. So anyways, I sort of spoiled it, but I did get offers from both of those companies, from DoorDash and Datadog. But the issue with these 2 offers was, 1, they're both in the summer. I can't do 2 internships at once. And 2, DoorDash's offer was for SF, their main office. And this was my first internship. I didn't know if I wanted to travel across the country for my first internship. So I killed 2 birds with 1 stone. I don't know where I found the balls to do this, because this was my first application season. I could have very easily gotten rejected from both for what I did. But to DoorDash, I told the recruiter, hey, if you don't give me New York City, I'm gonna join Datadog and I'm not joining DoorDash. And then I went to my Datadog recruiter and I was like, hey, if you don't give me fall, I'm just gonna go to DoorDash over the summer. And they both fulfilled the requests. I got DoorDash in New York City, and I also got Datadog in the fall. So my sophomore year summer, I was at DoorDash in New York City. I have a few vlogs in my channel if you wanna go check that out. And then my junior year fall semester after, I took a gap and I interned at Datadog. I was able to get both of those on my resume for my junior year recruiting cycle. And reflecting on my sophomore year, since this was the first application cycle, number 1, I swallowed my pride. Although I did get companies like DoorDash and Datadog, I think that was a whiff of luck. I applied to a bunch of companies I've never heard of. Their pay was bad, because all I wanted to do was put my foot in the door. I didn't care where it was. I did what's called shotgun applying. I applied everywhere. And number 2 was surrounding myself with like-minded people. This was the computer science career development Discord, as well as other communities that I joined that revolved around CS. This drove me to do the things like practice leak code every day for 2 hours and practice interviews until I really understood them and was really confident in them. I don't think I would have been able to do that by myself. And again, if you guys want access to communities like that, I'll put a bunch of links in my bio so you guys can check that out too. Moving on to my junior year, I was able to relax a little bit. Looking at the sheet, it looks like I applied to less than half what I did the year before. I only applied to 85 places. My OA rate was a lot better. I got 30 OAs out of the 85 I applied to, and I had 12 final round interviews from those OAs. It says I also got the same amount of offers that I did last year, which is 5, but I think some of the finals I ghosted after I got the internship that I was at my junior year summer. I don't really have too much to reflect on for my junior year because I was able to chillax and not have to interview every single day. So the grind that I did the year before was definitely worth it. And I guess my main tip is really just start early. It doesn't matter if you're a freshman or a sophomore or a master's student. A wise man once said, the best time to start was yesterday, and the second best time to start is today. That was from my dome, I made that up. But the only reason I was able to relax and have an application cycle that probably would have been equivalent to a first year's application cycle in 2021, 2022. I started early, I got my reps in early. So if there's ever a down in your head where it's like, I don't think I'm ready yet, or I don't know if my resume's ready yet, just do it and iterate. That's what I did as a sophomore. I was so lost as a sophomore. I didn't know what I was doing. But as I got those reps in, I learned, I iterated, and my future self, my junior year self, probably wishes they could thank my sophomore year self 100 times over. Wrapping this up with my senior year, I actually ran into a pretty big dilemma where I wasn't sure what I was gonna do in terms of my job after I graduated. To give you context, I finished up my Microsoft internship. At this point, I started school. I was pretty locked in that I got a return offer, so I sort of chillaxed on the applying. I took this this time to focus on finishing out my degree. Again, I was pretty set that I would have a job when I graduated, so, C's get degrees. After a bit of time of doing this, focusing on my academics, I got the email from Microsoft, and what should have been one of the, most happiest days of my life, where I broke into big tech, I broke into a tech giant like Microsoft. I was guaranteed a stable income for me and my girlfriend. I could finally move out the crappy apartment. I called it a Frisbee frack because it was just a Frisbee apartment that was passed down from captain to captain, so there's just a bunch of Frisbee people in it. Instead of celebrating all of that, I saw that the location was Seattle, Washington. Before I joined, I heard of people easily changing their location to New York, and I mentioned this to my manager that I really wanted to stay in New York. I wanted to stay near my family, I wanted to stay near my girlfriend, but I guess things changed. I was on the Xbox team. There was 2 layoffs within my org between the span of me starting my internship and me ending it, so that probably contributed. So once I saw that, I just had to roll my sleeves up, and I entered another recruiting cycle, but this time it was a new grad recruiting cycle. This was a position that everyone in CSCD did everything in their power not to be in. Because the whole point of applying for internships is to get a return offer so that you can have an offer sitting in your lap when you graduate. The barrier to entry, at least for interviews for internships, was a lot easier than a new grad interview, because the expectation of an internship interview is you're still in school, you're still studying. The bar was set a lot lower, but for a new grad, it's expected that you've finished your degree, you have had an internship, if not multiple internships, and they're gonna interview on that. So this was really scary. I didn't reject my Microsoft offer yet, so I was scared that I would need to ship myself to Seattle, Washington, across the country from my family and my girlfriend, for who knows how long. So it was like I was back at square one as a sophomore, where I was just applying to whatever I could. But the difference was I wasn't a sophomore anymore. I've had 2 interview cycles around my belt. I've done like 500 lead code problems at that point. So really I locked in. The first difference that I saw with new grad interviews and internship interviews was new grad interviews were so much longer. The standard for an internship, you applied, you took the OA if they had one, you had a phone interview with the recruiter, which is more of a formality, and then usually only 1 technical round. And sometimes they split that round into 2 half rounds like Microsoft did. But with new grad, most of the processes that I did were OA phone, same as an internship, but 2 to 3 technical rounds. So it was a lot harder. I was interviewing almost every day. Some of the interview rounds would be 2 hours long. Some of them would be 3 one-hour interviews back to back. It was rough, but I knew if I wanted the cake and eat it too, as in have the big tech job and be near my family and friends, this is just what I had to do. Ironically, the interview that I got my offer from was the most stressful interview out of all the ones that I did during that new grad cycle. For context, to pay for rent, because the internship money I wanted to mainly save, and I didn't want to just splurge it on my rent. I took up a part-time job as a robotics teacher at this international school in my town, and the interview got scheduled on a day where I had to teach my class. Thankfully, it was before I had to teach my class, but it was literally back to back, where the end of the interview was the start of when the class started. And for this class, I needed an hour of prep time to move the desks, set the tables up, set up the programs and the EV3 Lego bricks that they had. So I had to get to that school 3 hours early. They were a little confused as to why I was there 3 hours early. I had to explain like, oh, I have this interview. It's 3 hours long and it ends as soon as the class starts. So I need to be here so I could interview and be ready for the class after the interview. So thankfully it wasn't a 3-hour interview. It was 3 interviews back to back, an hour each. This is the one I was talking about before. So during the in-between periods where you had like a 10-minute break, I used that 10 minutes not to prep for the next interview, but I was setting up tables and chairs and the Lego stuff and the robotic stuff so that I would be ready for when my class got there. But I will say, I guess pressure creates diamonds or whatever, because that was one of the best interviews that I've had in my software engineering career. And this interview was for, I think I spoiled it before, Bloomberg. So I will be joining Bloomberg in September. Again, super excited to make content there. But that has been my journey as a CS major, now SWE, working in big tech in the big city. If you guys have any questions, let me know in the comments. I'll be sure to answer them. And if you're a CS student, good luck in the market. You guys got it. And I'll see you guys later.